Comrades, today we commemorate the 100th anniversary of Vladimir Lenin's October Revolution by looking back on a century of the useful idiots who have propagated communist lies. Then, Candace Owens in studio, Red Pill Black. Ariel Davidson and His Eminence Paul Bois join the panel of deplorables to discuss Trump's gun grabber smackdown, Republican odds on Election Day 2017, and more of Hillary Clinton's terrible ideas. We could fill a year of podcasts with those, couldn't we? I am Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. We have a lot of communism to get to today. Today is a chock full of communism, but first, let's start out with a little capitalism because there's some good news. We have a sponsor. We are going to keep the lights on today, keep Covfefe in the mug, and this sponsor, you've heard from them before, a really great product called Skillshare. So Skillshare is really great. If you're looking to get a leg up at work, leg up on your career, or you're just trying to have a little side hustle. I've been in Hollywood for 3 years. Nobody here has full-time employment. It's just not possible. So everyone's got a side hustle going on. Skillshare will give you the opportunity to get your skills up on any side hustle you're trying to do. Maybe your hobby, maybe you're going to make a little money on it. There are over 3 million members. There are 17,000 classes that you can access on this great site. It's the Netflix for learning things. So it's, you know, Netflix is the Netflix for just wasting time at the end of the day, but Skillshare is the Netflix for doing something productive and improving your life. You can take classes in anything. Just a few examples are graphic design, DSLR photography, social media marketing, digital illustration, and much more. I haven't done any of those things because they're too useful. I'm looking at classes right now that are even before that, which is how to stop wasting time, how to speed read, how like these kind of meta classes. They're really, really good though. And there are things that you wouldn't learn on your own. You're not going to go to some institution or a local college and learn these things, but you can do it right from the comfort of your own home. I'm a millennial, which means 2 things. I don't want to ever leave my couch because I've morphed right into it. I've actually become one with the chair and the cushions. And also, I don't want to spend a lot of money on that. I can get anything for a pretty good deal online. And this is a really excellent deal. You can have access to any of these classes. And for my listeners right now, you can go to Skillshare.com/Michael. That's Skillshare.com/Michael, Michael. I'm sort of like Michael Knowles now is becoming like Beyonce Knowles. We're both dropping the Knowles part. So it's just /Michael. You can get 1 month for free. So you don't have to pay anything. 17,000 classes. Depending on if you do the how to get things done and stop procrastinating and speed read, you might be able to finish all 17,000 in 1 month. So go over there right now. You'd be insane not to try this. Skillshare.com/Michael. Try out design, photography, marketing, entrepreneurship, anything else that you want to learn, virtually anything else, you can get there. So go do it. Skillshare.com/Michael. Okay, that's enough communism. That's enough happiness and human dignity and self-improvement and liberty. We have to get into all of the terrible lies of communism. Today marks the 100th anniversary of the October Revolution. This might confuse you as today is November 7th. The discrepancy of dates is directly caused by Russia's still having been on the old Julian calendar in 1917, but indirectly, more profoundly, the October Revolution's November birth date exemplifies the central fact of communism. It's a lie from the very beginning. Despite representing a tiny minority of political forces at work in the February Revolution to oust Russia's Romanov dynasty, and constituting only the majority of the most extreme leftist elements among the Russian revolutionaries, Vladimir Lenin called his faction Bolshevik, which means one of the majority. Now, speaking of lies, to commemorate this day, the Washington Post ran a 4,700-word piece titled, "100 Years Later, Bolshevism is Back, and We Should Be Worried." Yeah, I'd be worried about that. That's pretty scary. You might assume that the Washington Post article described the recent spate of New York Times pieces extolling the virtues of communism. Here are some headlines. What killed the promise of Muslim communism? Are Christians supposed to be communists? No, spoiler alert, no. Or why women had better sex under socialism. You might presume that the Washington Post discussed the terrifying recent poll that showed that the majority of American millennials would rather live in a communist, socialist, or fascist nation than a capitalist nation, than a nation where you have freedom. But no, that is not what the Washington Post talk about. Instead, in this nearly 5,000-word article, They accused Republican President Donald Trump, whose administration has overseen massive deregulation, enforcement of democratically enacted law, the appointment of textualist judges faithful to the Constitution, a bold and nuanced foreign policy that has thus far avoided the disastrous bellicosity of Barack Obama's regime, robust defense of civil rights and religious liberty. No. They accused that President Trump of being a neo-Bolshevik. The Washington Post, ladies and gentlemen. Democracy dies in darkness. Fake news at its finest. Vladimir Lenin is said to have called communist sympathizers in America useful idiots. The phrase refers to people like New York Times reporter Lincoln Steffens, who traveled to the Soviet Union shortly after the revolution and claimed, quote, "I have seen the future and it works." Or New York Times reporter Walter Duranty, I'm seeing a trend here, New York Times reporter Walter Duranty, who won the Pulitzer Prize for publishing Stalin's propaganda denying the Holodomor starved to death 7.5 million people. Or Anne Applebaum, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who penned today's insipid twaddle in the Washington Post. All allegedly expert thought leaders on a subject about which they wrote in such ignorance. The Russian Revolution led to the death of at least 94 million people as communism infected nations around the world. It enslaved half of the globe. Yet much of the left in America remains unrepentant in their support of tyranny.
And finally, new rule, Fidel Castro is not worse than vampire Hitler. And Cuba is not North Korea crossed with hell. If we had opened up relations with Cuba 30 years ago, instead of pursuing the stupidest, most ineffective policy in American history, not named the drug war, today Cuba would look like St. Bart's and your kid would be there on spring break drinking rum out of a jug shaped like a frog.
People in sinecures like yours, affluent, protected people in Western countries where they can speak their minds, who defend this guy. I've never met anybody who fled from Cuba who would defend him.
Because, well, the ones who have fled for a number of reasons, sometimes for personal reasons. They left their wives behind. They want to start a new life with a new wife, forget about the old family. You don't hear about that in the media there. And nationalism, the Cuban
So you're saying that people who fled Castro were abandoning their families?
Some of them,
because they had like a girlfriend?
Some want to begin a new life there. Some of them... in a new life there. Some of them were so there's not this huge system of political oppression that is very popular among certain sectors there.
In 1985, you praised the Sandinista government and you said that Daniel Ortega was an impressive guy. This is what you said about Fidel Castro. Let's listen.
You may recall way back in, when was it, 1961, they invaded Cuba. And everybody was totally convinced that Castro was the worst guy in the world, that all the Cuban people were going to rise up in rebellion against Fidel Castro. They had forgotten that he educated their kids, gave them health care, totally transformed the society.
Useful idiots.
In South Florida.
Useful idiots like Bernie Sanders at the end. I'm sure you could tell because he sounds exactly the same as he did then, both in content and in voice, but that was Bernie about 30 years ago. Useful idiots. Men of character and moral clarity saw this evil for what it was as it began. People all the time quote the Iron Curtain line of Winston Churchill's speech, "The Sinews of Peace," but they often neglect his prescription for how to fight this ideology of lies.
Be blind to the fact that the liberties enjoyed by individual citizens throughout the United States and throughout the British Empire are not valid in a considerable number of countries, some of which are very powerful. In these states, control is enforced upon the common people by various kinds of all-embracing police governments to a degree which is overwhelming and contrary to every principle of democracy. The power of the state is exercised without restraint. Either by dictators or by compact oligarchies operating through a privileged party and a political police. But we must never cease to proclaim in fearless tones the great principles of freedom and the rights of man, which are the joint inheritance of the English-speaking world, that freedom of speech and thought should reign. that courts of justice, independent of the executive, unbiased by any party, should administer laws which have received the broad assent of large majorities or are consecrated by time and custom. Let us preach what we practice. Let us practice what we preach.
Perfectly said, perfectly summed up by Winston Churchill. We must not only practice what we preach, we also have to preach what we practice. Yet from the American left, all too often we hear, "Liberty for me, but not for thee." From atop the shoulders of the giants who built our civilization on ordered liberty and human dignity, they preach against the spiritual and philosophical foundation of that society that they enjoy, of the life that they live. They are the sophisters, economists, and calculators that Edmund Burke warned us about. But some men understood Churchill's vision, and they saw through the degrading materialism of communist ideologies.
Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
Communism deprives man of his dignity because it pretends that man is an animal. That's why where conservatives see people, leftists only see the masses, the unwashed masses. How often do you hear that phrase? The more they love mankind, the less they love men in particular. G.K. Chesterton understood that communism relies on a central lie, which comes from the father of lies, and he explained the strange fruit of this mystical religion of materialism. He wrote, quote, "The Marxian talks as if the only object of saving people from sufferings inflicted by the, quote, blind forces of capitalism was that those people should have material consumption and material security. It is not. It is that they should have life and that they should have it more abundantly. It is not only that a man should be secure of eating the turnip, it is that he should have authority over the turnip and liberty with the turnip and the right to choose his own way of cooking the turnip. For that sense of dignity makes all the difference to his general view of life and of that heaven which fills the empty spaces and the idle hours. On this 100th anniversary of Lenin's lies, let's redouble our efforts to defend the liberty and dignity that make life worth living and to rebuff the useful idiots who propagate those lies at every chance that we possibly can. All right, enough about communism. Let's get to the news. Communism ruined an entire century, and it does not need to ruin the rest of my show. So we have an excellent panel to bring on. We have Candace Owens, Red Pill Black in studio. We have Ariel Davidson. We even have His Eminence, Paul Bois, the Cardinal himself. But I might have to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube before we go. Be sure to tune in to watch our next episode of The Conversation. That conversation is going to be on Tuesday, November 14th at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, featuring little old me. The conversation will stream live on the Daily Wire website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. It will be free for everyone to watch, but only subscribers can ask the questions. Subscribe today to ask me all of the most important, the most covfefe questions you have, and join the conversation. We have got a lot to talk about with our panel. We have Donna Brazil, we have Donald Duck, we have Ed Gillespie, and we have one of the stupidest things CNN's Crystal has ever said, but we can't get to it unless you go to dailywire.com right now and subscribe. For those who are already subscribing, thank you. You keep the lights on. You keep covfefe in my cup. For those of you who don't, go to dailywire.com right now. It is $10 a month or $100 for an annual membership. What do you get? What do I get, Michael? This is capitalism, baby. What do I get? Well, you get me. You get the Andrew Klavan Show. You get the Ben Shapiro Show. Yeah. But look at this. Look at this, folks. The Leftist Tears Tumblr. It's the 100th anniversary of the Russian Revolution, of the promise of the glories of communism, and we have relegated that awful ideology to the ash heap of history, and we've relegated their delicious tears to my Tumblr. You need this vessel or you might drown. Go to dailywire.com right now. Enjoy your leftist tears, hot or cold, always salty and delicious. We'll be right back.